Today's question that I'm going to talk about is why do we keep seeing the same problems coming up in our communities despite more services and more funding being thrown out there? Now, this is a really important question to ask. And certainly, if you've ever looked around your community and you've thought, why isn't anything changing? We're working so hard, but nothing really seems to be changing, and the statistics out in the wider world aren't making a difference. If that's your thoughts at the moment, then today's conversation is really you're gonna get a lot out of it. So let's first start by talking about what we don't necessarily acknowledge. So, more services does not necessarily mean better outcomes, and more funding does not necessarily mean meaningful change and big change happening. If those things were true, we wouldn't still be seeing rising mental health issues. We wouldn't still be seeing burnout in support sectors. We wouldn't be seeing families that are still overwhelmed and communities that are still disconnected and looking for solutions. So, what's actually going on? Well, here's the uncomfortable truth. I firmly believe that we keep treating the symptoms instead of underlying the root cause. As I said, this happens all the time across many different sectors. We keep jumping into, and like I said, this is common I've seen it in education, and I think, to be honest, a lot of government services, and that's not to have a go. That's not remotely trying to have a go, but I just think that it's very common when we look across health and education and law enforcement and things like that. There's very regularly, let's just add another service. Let's add another program. Let's just get some more funding to make this improve. But what is often missing is that no one stops to ask what's really happening here. And I keep referring back to this, but I saw this all the time in education, this constant band-aid approach. Oh, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, but never a pause to say, let's just lean into what's really going on and let's talk to the people actually being impacted. So I think what's really missing is, like I said, asking what's really happening, really diving into the question of what's preventing solutions that from currently working. And that's a big one because there can often be solutions out there that should be working. And if we actually spent a little bit of time listening and really diving into what's preventing solutions from working, we could get a lot of improved outcomes. And really at the core of it, why are people still falling through the cracks? Why is that still happening? Now, because those questions aren't always being asked, we end up with these band-aid solutions to an already broken system. Now, let me tell you what I saw over and over again and what I saw in education and what I see in communities. I see people working so very hard. Our key systems, health, education, law enforcement, and really everything that surrounds those areas. People are working really hard and our systems are at breaking point, but people are still falling through the cracks. And why is that? Well, it's because services are still operating in silos. Organizations are trying to fix things on their own and they're trying to do it all. They're trying to cover all the bases. And top-down generic solutions and programs are rolled out that are designed for the masses. And it's understandable why that happens, but there is so much opportunity for improvement if we look deeper and look further into things within our own communities. So your community, your people, your location, and your circumstances, they're all unique. No matter where you are, you have unique elements that exist that are different to the community next door. So when we drop in a one size fits all solution, it doesn't address the real barriers that are going on. It misses the cultural and the local context and the unique constraints that actually exist in your location. It fails to build trust and bring people along on the journey, which is really critical for widespread change. And it doesn't create the long-term sustainable outcomes that we're hoping to achieve. Real change only happens when we really lean into understanding the current reality and we build the solutions from the ground up, from what's already working, from where solutions aren't making the mark, and really listen and build those solutions from the inside out. So, if we want different results, we have to stop guessing and we have to stop assuming when we're applying solutions. So we really need to ask people what's happening. We need to listen with curiosity and not assume we know all of the story. And I think it's really important to remember that's not at all a judgment. We, as passionate people, we come in with some pretty strong opinions, and more often than not, they're very right. But when we listen with curiosity, we get we really get to validate those things that we know, but we also get to build upon them and find out more and dig deeper. We also need to understand local stories and lived experiences because we may have one perspective, but it's really important to get the community and the overall perspective. We need to map the strengths that currently exist and identify the gaps that don't. And we need to absolutely bring the sectors and the different parts of our community together instead of working alone to try to solve the problems. Because when you really understand the true picture, your solutions become specific to the local needs and constraints, and your funding becomes tailored to meet the current demands and can change as those demands change. And most importantly, your community feels seen, it feels heard, and it becomes part of the journey. And that's when we get to break the cycle and we really get to create a cultural shift in the way that we approach mental health and well-being and the way that it's prioritized. All right, so here's something that you can go out and do this week. What I want you to do is I want you to ask one person in your community this question, just out of curiosity, nothing grand, just a purely simple question, and it can be anybody. So here's the question. What's one thing that makes it hard for people to get the support that they need? So not you're not asking what do people need more of? You're asking what makes it hard to actually get the support they currently need or for other people in the community to get the support they need. It's just one simple question, and you just need to be genuinely curious. And when you are genuinely curious and you truly want to hear the answer and you really want to listen, you get to start hearing the real barriers. So people start talking about the fact that transport's an issue, stigma, timing, costs, connection, the capacity to do things. I know in my local community, transport is a huge issue. You know, every time someone needs support for anything, there's always a drive. You know, there are minor services in our town, but very limited. And the problem is people often come at it thinking, yeah, but it's not that far, just go to this place. But people hear that every time for many, many different things. So it's really important to lean into what's actually going on. Now, when you do, that is the kind of insight that can really lead to solutions that actually work. So if you go out and try it, please let me know what comes back, what sort of feedback you're getting. Share it in the comments or just write an individual post and tell us what you heard because I think we'll be surprised how many key qualities start coming through that we can be looking at and talking about across our group. All right, now just for fun, I'd love for you to share just your own personal insight by dropping an emoji, and it can be whether you're watching the replay or whether you're in the live, about one thing you think that is keeping the system from working or what you think is going wrong. So if you think it's band-aid solutions, drop a picture of a band-aid. If you think it's the cost to people, you might drop a dollar sign. If you think it's a transport issue, like in my community, it might be a car, but you might also think of many, many different things. I know for some communities, it's a cultural barrier. For other communities, it's a lack of variety. There can be so many different things. So feel free to create your own. Look, I really hope today's question has made you consider the way that we approach mental health and wellbeing solutions. And certainly, if you've got other questions, anything at all. It doesn't have to be to do with today's question. It can be about anything community driven wellbeing solution. It might be a funding issue. It might be how to set up your team, a specific issue you're having in your community. Drop it into the comments or into the Q&A post or into your own post, and we'll get to these on our Thursdays. But if you really thought today, yes, this is exactly the shift that we need, then I just want to tell you a little bit about my Community Wellbeing Changemaker membership. It's very much built for people who see the cracks, people who feel the frustration, which I know so many of us do, and who really want to know how to create real locally led solutions. So if you want to get on the wait list and you're not already on there, please jump on the link in the description and pop your name down there. It'll just give you all the info you might need to know before you add your name. And then you can pop your name down and you'll be the first to hear when the doors are going to be open. And I promise you, the doors opening is coming very soon. It's just around the corner. But you'll also, if you're on the waitlist, get access to bonuses that I don't share in other places. Look, thank you so much for joining me today. Remember, the reasons people and problems stay the same, so the reasons problems stay the same, isn't because people don't care. I think that there's no doubt that there's a lack of passion and a desire to make change happen. But it's because we're going about things sometimes at the wrong angle. When we really slow down, we listen and we spend time in that foundational stage and really understand the real story in our community, we can finally create solutions that make sense and that are long lasting and sustainable. It's a really important message for everyone. Look, as always, let's stop watching the mental health statistics and let's start changing them. And until next week, I'll talk to you soon. See you later.